Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kingsmen Live, presented by Manscaped. Manscaped is an official partner of the LA Kings. Thanks to this revolutionary company, manscaping accidents are a thing of the past. Just get yourself the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Inside, you'll find products like their Lawnmower 3.0, which is advanced skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't cut you. Everything you need to keep trimmed and smelling nice is in the Perfect Package 3.0. You can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code KINGSMEN at manscaped.com. That's manscaped.com, and use the code KINGSMEN. Joining me, as she does every week, Carlin Bathe. Carlin, I have never wanted to get through that read faster. How are you doing this week?
I was going to say, you're nailing it. Like each and every week, it's just like second nature at this point, You're nailing it, Jesse.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm doing well. I'm a little nervous because I know you start the shows with a would you rather, and I have no clue what you're going to ask this week. So to be completely honest, I'm a little nervous, but I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm great. We've got hockey back. So everything in my mind right now is hockey. And so this week's Would You Rather is going to be exclusively hockey. And it's real simple. Would you rather be in the West bubble or the East bubble?
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't know. Depends on where all my friends are. You know what I mean? I feel like I would want to be in the West bubble because I would want to be in, toward the eastern side of Canada. I feel like, just in case there was the odd chance that my parents could come and say hello.
Did you say you want to be in the West bubble so you could be on the eastern side of Canada?
Yeah, right?
But the West bubble is on the western side of Canada.
Am I that silly this early in the morning? I haven't had all of my coffee yet.
Hey, it's hockey's back. Like everybody's discombobulated.
Side of Canada in the east, so I could have my parents come drive and see me and say hello and give me a good old wave from outside the window on the eastern side, bubble, east.
Fair enough.
East.
Joining us to answer that question as well from Altitude TV, Lauren Jbara, and from NBC Sports Philly, Taryn Hatcher. Welcome, ladies.
Hey guys.
Hi guys.
Lauren.
We'll start with you, Lauren. Would you rather be in the Western bubble or the Eastern bubble?
I think I'd rather be in the Western bubble. One, obviously the Avalanche is there, and two, I just feel like Edmonton is so much more spread out, right? So there's a lot more space outdoors to put like a basketball court and areas to eat in. And I'm a big outdoorsy person, so I think just in general, I'd rather be in the Western bubble. And on top of that, they're having the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals there. So it'd be nice to just be in one location. But I do love Toronto as a city. You just wouldn't be able to explore as much as you normally would, when you go there on a normal road trip.
The conference finals and cup final was something I had not thought about that, but that's an excellent point. Taryn, how about you?
Well, I don't know, because Lauren made great points, but I think honestly, because you're kind of stuck. Like Brian Elliott brought it up, his whole family's in Toronto, but he can't really see them. I think it's got to be based off of who I would be in the bubble with. And I love Lauren, and I love Carlin, so I'm kind of maybe I would go to the West, but maybe I would bring Flyers pre and post game reporter Katie Emmer. Her and I could road trip across the country to Edmonton. But I love Toronto, so I'm kind of I'd love to be in the city of Toronto, but you can't really leave. So maybe Katie and I would road trip across the country to see you guys out in the West, unless Carlin comes to the Eastern bubble, so she's close to the Western side of Canada, of course.
I can't get my directions right anyway, so who knows where I'll be. I'll probably be in the middle of Canada at this point.
Yes.
You'll be in the Winnipeg bubble?
Carlin in Winnipeg, yeah.
Please, God, no.
She's I made it. Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, let's start with Lauren. Colorado, obviously not part of the qualifying rounds, but they'll have round-robin games. But now that you've got one, I don't really like calling them exhibition games, but now you've got one exhibition bubble game under your belt. What is the biggest challenge in reporting on a game like this as compared to normal?
I think there's a couple challenges. One for me was just keeping the energy alive. So I'm actually broadcasting at Pepsi Center and kind of roaming around the arena, but our play-by-play and analyst and studio host and studio analyst are all the way down 30 minutes south of Denver in our altitude studios. So I kind of felt isolated at Pepsi Center, and there was no lights, no ice. It was super dark. So that was definitely a challenge, just kind of keeping the energy alive. And I think on top of that, and Taryn, Carlin, you guys know this too, the biggest part of our job is to be a vessel of knowledge between the players and the fans and come up with those storylines that maybe aren't necessarily 100% hockey focused all the time. And a lot of the time we get those stories by just going into the locker room after practice and sitting down at stalls and just having conversations with these guys. And I feel like we just don't have that access right now to necessarily have those personal relationships and get some of those, fun stories that we necessarily would, because all of the interviews are over a Zoom with like 10 other reporters or 12 other reporters. So sometimes it's tough to get questions. And I think those for me might be the biggest two differences. Taryn, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say that second point you touched on is especially hard for me because we've been very fortunate this year with the Flyers locker room. It's a great group of guys. They all get along really well. And so you kind of you'll go talk to like Scott Lawton about something and Michael Raffel will pop into your conversation and sort of dog him out about something else. And then you get a different story that you didn't even know was going to come up. Right. And that's the fun stuff because it's not already written in the newspaper. You can't already find that story on Twitter. It's completely new and it's a really organic story. It's not like you're prodding questions in order to get a target story. It's a very natural thing, which kind of, I think, captures a lot of the personalities of these players. So it's hard because you're kind of deprived of that interaction and getting to do that. But other than that, like we're very fortunate. Lauren and I were actually texting about this the other day. We're very fortunate that our studio is in Wells Fargo Center. And actually myself, Jim Jackson, who does our play-by-play, and Keith Jones, who's currently doing analysis for our games, we're all in the rafters at Wells Fargo Center together. Obviously, it's empty and it's very quiet, but I can actually hear them from very far away, though. I can hear JJ whenever somebody's about to score, JJ raises his voice or takes a shot, obviously. And so you still get that excitement, which I value more than I can even put into words because it makes the game. I grew up listening to Jim Jackson also. So like that voice means a lot to me. But yeah, it is so bizarre. Our second intermission, I have to wrap around an interview. That's one question that's done by somebody else in Toronto. And a lot of times it's like not the question that I would ask if I was there. Yeah. So you're trying to frame it from someone else's perspective, which is interesting. But you know what? Worst things have happened to better people, and we're talking about a sport, and it's still a ton of fun. So I'll take it for what it is and just be happy that hockey's back.
How does the prep work change too? Because we're talking about the stories that we aren't getting anymore, right? Those stories that we're not getting inside of the locker room, those organic things that just pop up. I mean, sometimes, we'll get the message from PR like, oh, a player's family's watching them for the first time tonight. So then there's those stories in the crowd that you can go get as well. So without all of the stuff that you ladies are talking about, how does your prep work change? And maybe what does like a production meeting look like now? And what do you have to over prepare for to make up for some of the lack of this stuff?
I just know for me, and it's kind of been a thing that I've actually found in my second year with the Flyers has worked out much better for me, is tracking things over time, like what guys have said throughout the weeks and how it changes and evolves or how it stays the same, the stuff that keeps popping up, because then you know that that's actually something that's meaningful and true, and it's not kind of like a canned PR response that they're throwing out to you. Sure. Especially when it does change. That's the interesting thing. Like we talk about Nick Aubé-Kubel on our team a lot, who was a guy who was on the Phantoms for a long time, got pulled up and had a stellar season. And the commentary on him changed a lot throughout the season. So for me, it's like I look back in my notes from January versus my notes from March versus what they're saying now in training camp.
And those off too, I bet.
Oh, I have my boyfriend thinks I'm a hoarder. I have like 3 of these notebooks. They look exactly the same. They're completely like, it's so hard to read any of them because I'm like scribbling during games and stuff. But when you can't get like a unique kind of story in a vacuum from that day or that week or whatever, sometimes you kind of have to come up with them from stuff you've noticed over time. And that's when I think like holding on to a quote from 3 months ago sounds crazy, but it ends up actually paying off huge right now. So that's how I'm tackling it.
Yeah. And I
really text me stories and then I use them in the broadcast.
Hey, I'm here for you ladies. Anything you need, I got.
I know. I think honestly, Taryn, I feel the same way as well. Like I look at someone that the Avs brought to the bubble, Connor Timmons. He's one of our defensemen, and he was going to make the Avs team, and then ended up having 2 big concussions, was out of hockey for a year and a half, and then came back, had a decent training camp this year, and then played for the Colorado Eagles, our AHL team. And then he came back for this 10, 11, 12-day summer training camp, and he was phenomenal. And you even see like what head coach Jared Bednar says back in the fall during that training camp. And they're like, yeah, he has a lot of potential. He still needs a little bit of work though, but he's getting there. And then seeing what he said about him, after this camp. And he's like, wow, he's going to be an impact player for our team for years to come. We're bringing him to the bubble because of that. And even just watching him play and watching, the differences between September and July, it's just crazy to see the growth of these guys. So it's cool to have storylines like that in general. And I think for me too, coming up with storylines now, this bubble is something we've never seen before, right? So I've been kind of trying to find different ways of talking about what the guys are doing inside the bubble, or how they keep the ice, good. They're playing 3 games a day in each arena. It's difficult to keep that ice the same from game 1 all the way to game 3. So doing storylines like that too, that some people might not have necessarily all of the knowledge on, and we can ask questions about it and we can do research on it. That kind of thing too. I think that's also really interesting. And in terms of prep, all of our meetings are through Zoom. I feel like after this, if I never have to see a Zoom again in my life, I'm very happy. I'm just like, I want to just hug people. I'm just like, I miss people. I was like, Mom and Pete, our play-by-play and analysts, I'm like, I miss you guys. Like, I just want to give you guys a big hug. It's just, I know. I feel like I miss that social interaction with people. And even my photographer that's down at Pepsi Center, he has to stand 6 to 8 feet away. And I'm just like, hey, what's up? So I miss that. But in terms of prep, everything through Zoom, and then just finding different story ideas like that.
The other half of being in the locker room and getting to see people face to face is being around your colleagues, right? And one of the things I'm always, probably to a fault, I'm hyper aware of is not stepping on other people's work, right? If I see somebody having a private one-on-one with one of the players, I'll listen, but I don't want to, crib audio from them or take their story. How difficult is it? We'll start with you, Taryn. How difficult is it to coordinate work that you're doing with maybe something that, the CBC is working on, or TSN, or a beat writer, when we are all far apart from each other and doing this all on Zoom? How difficult is it to coordinate this multi-team effort?
I think honestly at this point there's just a lot of kind of like understanding amongst people, because it's limited for everybody, right? Like when we get on these calls, sometimes they go on for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. And depending on how long a guy talks, you can only get so many questions in. And then a lot of people are only pulling from 4 answers. But again, that's one of those things where I look at, like, we were very fortunate during the pause that we got a lot of interviews with Flyers players, and we got to ask them very unique things. And I get it was a while ago, but in reality, a lot of them haven't done much since, other than gone to training camp and gone up to the bubble. So for me, it's like, maybe let's revisit these unique things that some of those interviews were 20 minutes. We cut 3 minutes of it and put it on our website, and who knows how many people saw it then. Well, let's revisit those other 17 minutes and see how what they said then applies to what's going on now. Like, a lot of people are talking about conditioning, and shockingly in the Flyers-Penguins game the other night, there wasn't a lot of guys, keeled over, hands on knees by the end of a long shift. Like, people were fairly well conditioned. Yeah. Well, we were talking about Sean Couturier ran and did yoga the entire pause until phase 2 because he couldn't get back to Canada. So it's interesting. You can build stories off of those unique moments that you had a while ago. But other than that, there is some redundancy, I think, between, however many reporters are on the call, because not all of them even get their questions in. Like, there's times where, right, and I'm fortunate, but I'll have like my hand raised thing, but I raised it on the second to last question. And so they don't get to my raise because it was a follow-up to something somebody else said. And, it's such a limited vacuum right now. It is hard, but that's again where I go back to, all right, when did I talk to this guy where I got something nobody else got? It might've been in March, truthfully, but no one's heard it. It's still new to them. So Let's see how we can take that, bring it into the present, and make it a completely different story. But then you have things like Sean Couturier's daughter was born 3 days before he left. Everybody's going to cover that story. It's just about bringing something new to it, and just trying your best. Honestly, it's a unique time for everybody.
There's a lot going on in my background right now. My room they're opening the fridge, and her dog is like right here, sitting there. I was like trying to focus for a second. I'm like, she's opening the fridge. Her dog's like running by. I'm like, what is happening?
The content we need.
Yeah, we have a very strict pro dog cameo policy here on All the Kings.
I know, he's really cute too. His name's Channing.
Bring the dog in.
There's Channing.
Hi, Channing.
Oh, he's getting shy.
He's a little white fluff.
Jesse, he kind of looks like my Wally, doesn't he?
He does a little bit, yeah. Although it looked like he had a dark spot on one of his hips. He just darted past
he's
the camera.
wearing a diaper because he's old. And it's similar to a dark spot, but not quite.
Every time Laura and I do anything together, it becomes like so far left of what was supposed to go on.
How's the bubble?
Oh my gosh.
Dog's wearing a diaper and
that's a totally different kind of bubble.
Okay, I need to rein it in. What was the question?
Yeah, so to reset, Lauren, just curious how you deal with the challenges of as Taryn said, maybe some redundant reporting as everybody's rushing to get the same stories out to their audience.
Yeah, I agree with Taryn too. I think she said it's like understood just between all the members of the media. And we all know that you can use each other's questions, you can use each other's answers. But that's happened to me a few times too, where you do the hand raising feature. And I'm like, it's such a good question. I really want to ask it because I can possibly like form a storyline around it, and they don't get to it. And so that part's kind of frustrating and challenging. But at the same time too, we also had a show all through quarantine. Altitude Sports did. It was a 2-hour sports show every single weekday. And so we did a lot of interviews with a lot of different Avalanche players throughout that whole time. So I've kind of been going back to that stuff and finding storylines through that too. Like someone like Ryan Graves, he's from Nova Scotia. He was quarantining in Prince Edward Island, which I've never been. I heard it's beautiful. But he drove all the way from PEI to Denver by himself. It's like 45 hours just because he didn't want to quarantine when he got back. Because if you fly, you know, the guys had to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah.
So he made that drive by himself, 45 hours. And we were just asking him, you know, what he was doing during the drive. That was the third time that he's done it. He actually did it before preseason this year too, as well. So it's just really fun to find those kind of storylines. But yeah, in terms of, you know, people stepping on each other's toes, I think it's all just understood that, you know, everyone needs to get at least one question in. You can use each other's answers for storylines, and, you know, no one can get upset if you feel like you're stealing someone else's content, because we just have to make the best of what we have right now. And it's all, you know, universal. Everything that we're doing is being put out for everybody, and every question that everyone's asking is being put out for everyone. So just kind of having that understanding and being able to use other people's sound without getting, you know, mad at it or mad that someone else is taking your storyline or anything along those lines.
Well, at 2 hours a day, it sounds like you guys have a lot to talk about. I guess that comes hand in hand with following a team that's a contender for the Cup. We don't have that problem here at the moment. Let's get real quick into predictions before we let you go. Lauren, the Colorado Avalanche obviously not participating in a qualifying round. They're playing their round robin games. Before the season started, I picked them to win the Cup. I mean, how good do they look? How do you gauge their chances in this bubble scenario?
Yeah, honestly, the Avs have a good problem. One, just talking about the guys that are playing between the pipes. We don't even know who's going to be starting come round one on August 11th, because Pavel Francouz has 21 wins on the season and Philip Grubauer has 18. Both of them have been phenomenal, and Grubauer has dealt with injuries all season long. So just starting from the back, working forward, the goaltender situation, it's a good problem to have, not knowing who you're going to start because they're both so good. And defensively, you look at someone like Ryan Graves, who no one knew who that was at the beginning of the season, and he's worked himself up to be in the top defensive pairing next to Cale Makar, who everyone knows Cale Makar is just phenomenal at what he does. And then you look up top with all the forwards, lines 1 through 4, and the depth that the Avs have. they almost don't even know which forwards are going to be sitting out because there's so much talent and so much potential in this team that Jared Bednar is still just like, I don't know, who exactly is going to be in that starting lineup come Sunday against the Blues. We were kind of trying to figure it out, but there's going to be like one or two forwards that are left out that on any other team could potentially be a top 6, even top 9 forward. So just looking at the depth on this Avalanche team, they have a lot of potential to be able to win this season. They just need to tighten it up a little bit, get a little more discipline. There was, I think, at the beginning of the third period, the first 9 minutes, they killed off like 6 penalty minutes in the first 9 minutes of the third period. So I think that might just be shaking off some rust. You're not on the ice. You're finally playing against someone that's not your own team for the first, in
They're just
4.5 months. I feel like these guys got so tired of scrimmaging each other, Taryn. I don't know if the Flyers felt the same way, but just watching them towards the end, you're like, okay, you could just tell that these guys are ready to go.
Oh, yeah. Scott Lawton was mic'd up for a practice one day, and he was like, man, I just want to hit somebody. But you can't because it's scrimmage. And, and he's all hyped up because they're just – I think so many of them felt like they were pent up for so long. But, yeah, you could tell they were just – especially because the Flyers' first exhibition game was against the Penguins. So, they're all buddies. No, they were just ready to ramp it up and hit somebody, especially a Penguins player, hard. And it was, for me, it was just hearing, the sound of a puck on ice and a stick hitting a puck. It was just like Christmas morning to me. So, yeah, no, I think the guys are ready to hit somebody. And then as far as the Flyers go, not to be incredibly redundant with what Lauren said, but the Flyers have had, first round yips historically recently. But they've also gotten themselves in a great goaltending situation, which they haven't exactly had for, quite a while here. So in a great place in terms of that. And then you have a Selke Trophy finalist in Sean Couturier and a Jack Adams finalist in Alain Vigneault for head coach. And you're just sitting there and I think with Philly fans, and we saw it when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, you believe in your team, you really believe in your team, but you also kind of, you brace yourself for the impact of heartbreak, and people kind of now are looking around like, so this team could do this, huh? Because we've got issues defensively in that Shane Gostisbehere, who 2 years ago was a top blue liner, is now potentially going to be a healthy scratch. They've just got so many great young defensemen, and then you can mix and match these lines in terms of the forwards, and they're able to produce. And then you look at Alain Vigneault. We talked to him in March. And he was preparing day by day, preparing for the return. He's one of, when I talk to Ian LePerriere or Mike Yeo or even Michelle Taryn, all the assistant coaches on the staff, they all say across the board, he is the most well-prepared guy they've ever encountered as players, as a coach. He prepares for everything. He's old school in certain ways. He's very, very progressive in terms of believing in sports science and how hard you can condition these guys, and really puts a lot of faith. He's good at delegating. And for the first time in a while as well, this is a team. It used to be the team goes as the veterans go, as Claude Giroux goes, or as Jake Voracek or Sean Couturier even goes. Now it's like we're talking about Obey Kubel. Scott Lawton got the game winner in overtime the other day. You want to talk about a weird situation in the bubble with it being dead quiet. Kevin Hayes, who people were on the fence about when they signed him that heavy contract, looks just like an Adonis to everybody now because he's the guy you want on your bench in a dead quiet arena. He's the guy who always keeps it going, always keeps them talking, always keeps it light. So the Flyers really, for a very unique situation, kind of have a lot of good pieces in place to succeed in an odd time. Of course, now you also have, Philadelphia fans. I'm born and raised here, so I love them. I'm one of them. But they're like, of course, this is the cup when they look the best, when everybody wants to put an asterisk next to it. And I'm like, let's just be positive for now. And then maybe next year, we can also aim for a cup. And then maybe in years following, and then we can all be happy. Just let it breathe. Let's just give them a minute. They got to get out of the first round. But things look really promising here, which is, it's very refreshing as a born and raised Flyers fan. I know, Carlin, you've got obviously lots of Flyers ties in your family. You got
the flag in the bag, every.
Yeah. I was going to say, is that some orange and black I see back there?
I have my King stuff too, but it's also there.
Taryn, I will say, I love how you say the word orange. Like you say
orange?
Yeah,
orange?
I think orange.
Is that weird?
Orange. Orange.
How do I say it? I don't even know.
There's a lilt of Philly accent in there.
Yeah, I love it. I love the Philly accent.
Listen, you all can pipe down. All right, I'm not here for none of this abuse, for none of this slander, none of it.
Now offer us some water ice.
Water ice.
Water ice.
Water ice.
Water ice.
Well, Carlin will always root for the Flyers, but I never will. But it's been a pleasure, Taryn, so I'll go ahead and root for you. I want to thank both of you for joining us. Lauren, thank you. Taryn, thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. We appreciate it. And Carlin, it's so good to see your face again. I miss you guys. Like I miss
you both. You're
I know.
killing it.
Let's all just drive central when this all ends, and we can have a little reporter bubble and just hang out.
Let's freaking do it.
Have the draft in Kansas City or somewhere centrally located. We're gonna take a quick break to hear more from Manscaped. Thank you again, Lauren. Thank you, Taryn. When we come back, we'll talk about the bubbles and the social media roundup.
Miss you.
It's one all, one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
Huge thanks to Taryn Hatcher and Lauren Jbara for joining us. Carlin, that was fun. Thank you for setting that up.
Absolutely. That was so fun. It's nice to hear kind of their sides of things while they're going through pandemic hockey, which, no one could have predicted we would ever have to go through. So they're reporting in a historic time right now. And it's so awesome to see. And I'll be rooting them on the whole way.
And they're not in the bubble, which I'm still curious. Obviously it's one of those things I'll never get to experience, and that's a double-edged sword, I suppose. But I'm curious what the bubbles look like. We have, though, an opportunity, to take a brief look at the bubbles. We've got the Edmonton map here. We've got Rogers Place, the hotel, the Events Plaza, the Sutton Place Hotel, I'm not going to try and squint and read that on the Skype call, but I mean, there are options.
Delta.
They meant, yeah. But I mean, it's right in my mind, you say bubble, and I just flash back to the Simpsons movie where the huge glass dome sits over Springfield. But of course, it's nothing like that, right? It takes a lot of work. And there we've got the one in Toronto.
Not even an episode, just the movie. Wow.
The movie's the one with the dome. What could I tell you? But there's the map of the facilities out in Toronto, and a lot of work going into maintaining these bubbles. And obviously, they've had 0 positive tests, so it's going great as compared to, say, baseball. I just think they're doing a fantastic job. I've been really impressed with all of it, including the look of the games. Now, the NHL gave us a preview of what they thought it would look like. You're seeing it there on the screen.
Yep.
And the actual finished product, pretty close.
It looks really nice. Producer Chris earlier was saying it's very WWE-esque, and that's kind of what they do at WWE. Lots of big lights, lots of big screens, just kind of filling in the atmosphere. But I wasn't sure what they were going to do with the seats, and I love how they covered them. So it's almost like you're forgetting the fact that something should be there because they put so many things there to distract you in a great way that I think it ends up looking really, really nice on television. And then they supplement with so many great shots of the game and the gameplay that you kind of forget that you're missing so much at the same time. So I've really enjoyed the product that they've put on so far, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to feel normal, right? That's just inevitable. And so, I'm watching the preseason games, and I've been watching preseason games, whatever we're calling them, the exhibition games. But I mean, I've watched a little bit of baseball. I've seen a little bit of the basketball, and I like the cardboard cutouts at the baseball stadiums. I do like the tarps, or whatever you want to call it, the canvas screens they've put over the seats in the NHL. And I think it is, like your brain sees it and it's not normal. But at the same time, as long as you know what's going on in place of it, whether it's the cardboard cutouts, whether it's the canvas tarp, I think because you know what it is, you're doing the quick transition math. You're like, oh, okay, right, there's no fans because the thing that says the NHL's there. And then you just sort of move on, right? And maybe once every 10 minutes I'll catch myself, right? Especially it happens the most when the camera angles change.
Yeah.
They're experimenting, it seems like, with especially on the power play, with this moving camera, and it pulls out to a broader view. Alan Walsh has complained about it on Twitter. I happen to agree with him. I'm not sure I like it, but
the net on the power play view.
No, it's more like in the corner. It feels like it's a wider view, and the camera moves more. Whereas in the normal broadcast, it's sort of stationary, set at blue line or center ice or whatever. And I get it; it's a work in progress, so I'm not trying to be critical. But it's just in those transitions is when I'm most aware of the fact that there's no fans. But I do like the pumped in sound more than I thought I would.
Oh, I love the pumped in sound. I was never not a fan of that going into it. It's something that's so necessary. You think about it. You cannot have a silent arena and have hockey players be heard while they're playing their game. It is like that should be what it's most jarring when you can hear them yelling, and I'm like, oh yeah, we have to be mindful of not catching those words that they might be saying that aren't TV friendly. But for the most part, those are the only moments where I am reminded, oh yeah, there's no fans. Yes, there's that artificial crowd noise. Whoa, did I just hear somebody yell down deep in the corners?
Right.
Okay. And then, like you said, you kind of just move on. You register for a quick second, like this is different, but my brain is happy with the experience where I'm not stuck dwelling on anything, kind of sitting there like a curmudgeon, like, this is terrible, like the whole time. I'm not feeling that at all. Plus, you pair it with just our general excitement that the sport has returned. I feel like a lot of that, like you said, we're just very forgiving about it right now.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because you can't, in a perfect world, you'd have lots of opportunity to experiment with different presentation options, right? Like, I don't mind the fake noise. I thought I would dislike it, but I don't. But I'd still be curious to see what some other alternatives are. We don't have time for that, right? We're going into games, so we got to pick something. We got to move with it, and then hopefully we never have to deal with this again. Right. And so,
what would you do if you had to think of something off the top of your head? I know that puts you on the spot.
My first impulse would be to just let us hear it. Right. But I'm a 42-year-old guy with, a blue streak in my language. So I don't mind hearing salty talk, but I can understand if you're a parent of a young child who wants to watch hockey, maybe you're not interested in hearing everything that gets said on the ice. So, there's that. I'd be really curious. One of my friends who's involved in TV production was talking about the idea that scoring a game live, using crowd noise instead of music, is a skill that we've never thought about before. But it turns out there might be people who are really good at it. Yeah. Right. Matching crowd noises and crowd reactions to moments in the game. For example, we had an overtime goal. We'll get to that in a second. Yep. In the Philly-Pittsburgh game. Maybe there is somebody out there who's better at working a soundboard and getting the correct crowd reaction to that moment than other people. Yeah. And maybe, it'd be nice to try and find that person. But like I said, we got real games starting on Saturday. We don't have time to audition crowd scoring specialists. So, But all in all, 9 out of 10. I mean, it's great.
It's another example of people having to do the heavy lifting in areas where, it would already be lifted for them. Like the girls were talking about having to pull stories from different areas because of the things that they can't organically find. It's probably the same for that person. I'm not 100% of who is doing it, but I would assume it would be one of the game entertainment staff members who would usually just play the music. So it's another example of like, like I got to add this to my plate that I've been used to for so long. So it's very interesting to see how it's all done. I wonder if there's a crowd noise specialist though, or if there
might be.
There's a need for it now.
I guess we'll find out.
There's a need for it.
But let's go ahead and look at some of the highlights from some of the games that have already been played. Excuse me. There'll be 3 more today. We started off the very first goal of the return, phase 4, whatever we're calling it. Connor Sheary there scores for Pittsburgh, and man, did it feel good to see a goal scored.
Absolutely. And I think that'll go down in the history books too. Like I keep looking at this as such a historic time that hopefully we don't have to repeat. So just seeing that happen, it's just a little bit of a nice punch of like, ooh, hockey. Yeah. Puck on the net. Let's go.
And a real goal, right? Like it didn't bounce off of somebody. It didn't come on a broken play or whatever.
Yeah.
Like a real goal. And thank God they didn't have like an offside review. But anyway, we also had our first overtime goal. Now, like, and I'm an old man, so I still say that's a 2-line pass, but a really nice finishing move there.
Absolutely. And Scott Lawton, which Taryn was talking about earlier. I mean, that's just great for him to score that OT goal. Another one that will probably go down in the history books. So it's just, I'd look at these moments as just, we're writing this unique story about this whole season in general. And that's just another special moment to add to it.
Yeah, and that goal is a little bit of hyperbole, but it reminds me of Datsuk, right? He does that move where he'd pull it back a little bit and then flip it over the goalie. He didn't flip it so much as he just roofed it, but still pulling the goalie out of position and then, sort of soft hands.
Making you guess.
Yeah. Now, the final goal in the Edmonton game, I'm on the record as saying I prefer Crosby over McDavid, but obviously I would never take away anything from McDavid. And you see that goal right there. He doesn't. We'll see a better highlight of it in a second. But Carlin, he's not looking at the net.
He's not looking at the net, and he's doing Connor McDavid things, and
so annoying.
It's to people like ourselves who could never play on that level. It is just like, oh.
Nugent Hopkins the assist. Here's McDavid walking in off the draw. Shoots and scores. Short side. And Edmonton all of a sudden has broken it open. 4-1 as McDavid fools Riddick. Nugent Hopkins the assist. Here's McDavid walking in off the draw. Shoots and scores. Short side. And Edmonton all of a sudden has broken it open. 4-1 as McDavid fools Riddick. Nugent Hopkins the assist. Here's McDavid walking in off the draw. Shoots and scores. Short side. And Edmonton all of a sudden has broken it open. 4-1 as McDavid fools Riddick.
It's those
Nugent Hopkins the assist. Here's McDavid walking in off the draw. Shoots and scores. Short side. And Edmonton all of a sudden
looking to in his mouth guard, scoring tweeners, and you're just like, what the heck? This guy's so good. This guy's so good.
Now, I can't remember if it was Lauren or Taryn mentioned that we're getting more stories than ever before, right? Because we've got all these guys in one spot and lots of downtime. So let's go ahead and do our first round of socially distant media roundup.
Socially distant media roundup. I love it. So we've got a collection of clips here from the social media kind of showcasing bubble hockey. As you can see, there's a bucket hat shadow right there with the pan down. And then look, Elias Pettersson with a little cute bucket hat himself there. I mean, this look, I wasn't expecting to see bucket hats in the bubble, but here we are, Jesse. And there's just
I'm more interested in the t-shirt myself.
I can't even read it. What does it say? Bring joy into your day.
It's a taco company. Yeah.
Exactly. Look at that.
And he appears to be palming the basketball. I'm also curious about that. But
big hands. I don't know. I can't do it. I could never. I could palm my cup of noodles. That's about it. There's lots of activities and things that are happening. Ping pong. Is it ping? It's ping pong, right? Because I used to say ping pong growing up without the
it's ping pong. Or table tennis.
Pong. I'm just gonna stick with table tennis. There's lots of table tennis happening, and good hand-eye coordination here from everybody too. I mean, can you get more than 2 volleys back and forth in a ping pong game?
It depends on who my partner is, right? Because there's some people who are uniquely terrible at ping pong.
A lot of us, I feel.
Get better.
A lot of ping pong happening.
Yeah.
A lot of hockey watching happening. So, I mean, there's hockey on TV all freaking day. We're watching it. So, of course, they're watching it as well. I see some slippers.
There's also an NHL 20 Stars versus Stars game. It looks like on the lower TV.
Interesting.
So I'm guessing that's Sagan and the Stars playing against one another.
Yeah. So we got pandemic video games as well. Jesse, tiny instruments.
Yeah. I think that's a ukulele, I believe.
We think it's a ukulele.
Yeah.
Is it a violin or a ukulele? Because both could be, I mean, have we thought about it?
Well, I mean, how many players? Just like 20-something players for 30-something team. I mean, there's 600, 700 guys in the NHL. Somebody's got to play the violin, but I'm guessing they didn't bring it to the bubble.
You never know. I want to maybe hope that there's a violin in there, but probably most likely a ukulele, which is just so sweet to think about. And then the Flyers put together this wall of, the pictures are so tiny, but from the close-up shots, it looks like mostly family members that they can just kind of go by and visit and check out. So that's pretty special. I like that. I saw another team too. It's not in our roundup, but they had photos of their family already waiting for them in their rooms on their side tables. So just really special stuff like that you wouldn't normally think you need to do. And then now, like everyone is, they're getting creative. So that was pretty special too.
Yeah. And there's I think that's the Flames, right? And their matching outfits. Yeah.
Strolling in. Now that there's no suits allowed, Jesse, people are putting together some casual items to wear. And the Flames went with white polos and a neutral pant. What do you think about that?
I'll save my thoughts for that for the end of the social media roundup, because I've got a couple thoughts on the whole thing. But I thought you had a pretty funny description of the look.
Yeah, they look like they're gonna go sell some car insurance.
Yeah.
But that's okay. They're all at least looking like they're a team together, strolling with their polos. And I mean, I wonder also too where the decisions to wear the things that they're wearing are coming from. Like, I wonder if it's a captain decision of like, okay, everybody bring your white polos, bring your neutral pants. These will be our uniforms. Or if it's PR saying, hey, I'm making this decision for you. These are your uniforms to wear to the arena. So I'm curious. I would love to get that story. Maybe I pass that off to my girls and see if they can get some scoop on who's deciding what they're wearing. And to finish off the social media roundup, we got pretty much a whole fashion show of the Leafs kind of rolling in, and it looks like whatever they chose. So there's a lot of high fashion here. People showcasing some sweet kicks. Producer Chris pointed out someone was wearing a Balenciaga shirt. I forget who and what, but it's there.
I think it was William Nylander.
Our high fashion stuff. So there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So Balenciaga. Yep. And that's another. Yeah, that's my question. Is how are you deciding now? Not only what to wear, but where's the voice coming from? And I think that's so unique that suits are not being worn. And we talked about this before the show started. The length of time that you are seen wearing a suit is so minimal. It's from the hotel to the bus, and then from the bus to the locker room. And the amount of people that see you wearing it, it's also minimal. But the photos that get snapped and the footage that gets shot, that seems to be extremely plentiful. And it seems like the suits, I feel like they're going to stay in hockey even though they're allowed to wear casual wear in the bubble. I feel like there's no way you get rid of the suits once the regular season returns, Jesse.
Yeah, and I've never understood the suit thing. You know, when I was this is ages ago, but when I was in high school, every Friday the football team had to wear suits to school, and the water polo team had to wear, I don't remember what they had to wear, but every different coach had a different idea for team building, unity type activity. And seeing the bubble, seeing all the different activities, seeing the photos that Philadelphia put up, and I know that Toronto, the Maple Leafs had done some stuff to their floor. And a lot of league employees had put family photos and things like that in players' rooms. It's one of those things that I find sort of really fascinating, because it's absolutely the kind of thing that can impact a team's performance and will impact different players in a different way. And it's one of the reasons I always push back on the people who use the fancy stat charts exclusively to make an argument about a player. I think it was Taryn who mentioned Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
Right. And he's the kind of guy, and especially in a bubble situation like this, those glue guys, those locker room guys may have an oversized impact and offer an oversized advantage, because although I was never one of those rah-rah type people, in fact, I'm the kind of person who rolls his eyes and pushes back against the rah-rah stuff. On the rare occasion that it got through to me and I would buy in, it would absolutely elevate my effort level and my performance, right? Whatever it was, I a little peek behind the curtain. I used to work at Nordstrom and down in Costa Mesa in the flagship store. And every morning before the store opened, there'd be a 15-minute, over the loudspeaker to all the different departments, there'd be a cheer and a song and a pep talk and let's go. And I was, I don't know, I was
fun.
I was 19 or 20 and for me, it was just a job. So I'd roll my eyes and I'm do we have to, can I just get ready? And, I can imagine there might be some player out there, although I suppose they're conditioned at this point to buy into that sort of thing. But yeah, I just feel like those guys will have a bigger impact. And if, somebody on Calgary was let's all dress the same and this is what it's going to look like, I think it absolutely could impact the outcome of such a short, weird tournament.
You're not wrong. And it's weird because we won't know either.
Right.
We won't really know unless one team goes all the way and they're wearing whatever the heck they want to every single game. and teams that wear polos are maybe falling off the wagon a little bit. This is a good maybe social experiment too, that I know you love Google like docs. Maybe you keep tabs on who's wearing what and put that in contrast to their performance level.
The other thing I'm real curious about, and there is no answer to this, but I know a lot of people watching the NBA bubble are suggesting that there's going to be some super teams that come out of it as guys from different teams get to know one another. It's a little different because they're all in one place, and the NHL is operating on two different places. But with the salary cap staying flat and with a bunch of guys' contracts coming up, I think we might see a lot of short-term contracts as guys try and keep their options open for when the salary cap goes back up again.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple people make friends in the bubble and influence contract signings moving forward. So I'm curious about all of it. But on the whole, Carlin, just super happy to have hockey back.
Absolutely. There's nothing greater than the greatest sport in the world. And to see it back on our TVs, even if it's in a different way, it's special. They're making miracles happen for us, for the people at home who want to watch this sport, and for the guys who want to finish their season. Somebody went above and beyond. Multiple people went above and beyond to put all this together. And you know me, I've been preaching, is it going to be safe? Let's freaking hope. The 0 positive tests that came out recently too, it's working. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm just so happy that by the way it's going, it looks like we're going to have a Stanley Cup champion at the end of all of this. And I'm just so happy for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to make it through, what are we at the end of August? About 2 months. We need to last about 9 weeks to make this happen. It's looking good so far. Like I said, tremendous effort, tremendous result out of not only the PR staffs, the support staffs, the entertainment crew, everybody giving us a great product. I want to thank everybody at the NHL for bringing hockey back. Carlin, I want to thank you for joining me this week.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me.
Huge thanks to Lauren Jbara from Altitude TV and Taryn Hatcher from NBC Sports. Of course, huge thanks to everybody at the Kings for making sure we can bring you this little project. And, of course, thank you to everybody watching on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Twitch. Reminder that in the future, if you want your comments to be seen by me and Carlin, you will join us at twitch.tv/LA Kings. We are going to be back next week talking about the qualifying rounds, talking about the hockey world, taking a look at social media, and, of course, talking about the Kings. Please do check out All the Kings Men, the podcast at lakings.com/podcast. I'm running out of people to thank, Carlin, so I'm going to wrap it up and say we'll see you next week. Thanks again, everybody.